For years, I was taught that reality was something fixed, controlled by external forces, by DNA, by chance. But that never convinced me. I saw people transforming their lives simply by changing the way they thought, the way they felt, the way they talked to themselves. That's when it all began to unfold. When someone says, "It's mine," they're not just fantasizing, they're reprogramming their own biology. It's not loose spirituality. It's applied science. The cell obeys signals, and the mind is the one that sends those signals. If I declare something with conviction, the body interprets it, the brain reconstructs it, the energy field aligns itself. Reality does not come because you wish it comes because you assume it, because you say it has already happened, with such truth that the universe has no choice but to deliver it. Not by magic, but by vibrational coherence and biological response. What I am going to reveal now is not a theory. It is a code, a set of keys that activate manifestation at the cellular, genetic, and vibrational level. It all starts at the point where you stop waiting and start declaring. Because when you say it is done, the universe understands that it is time to act, and it acts. It took me years, perhaps decades, to understand that my body does not react to the world as it is, but rather to the world as I perceive it to be. The cell has no eyes, no ears. It does not know if what I am experiencing is real or imagined. It only responds to the signal. And this signal does not come from reality. It comes from my mind. When I said I can't, my body would start to withdraw. When I declared it's mine, my cells began to operate in a different pattern. They believed it. It was a shock to realize that my body chemistry changed simply by changing my beliefs. I didn't need the outside world to change first. All I had to do was declare it inside, with conviction, and voila, my body obeyed. This isn't philosophy, it's physiology. Epinephrine, dopamine, oxytocin, all of these substances were triggered or suppressed depending on what I assumed to be true. My mind became the conductor of my biology, and there was no point in lying. If I just said words without feeling, my body would ignore them. But the moment I started to experience the "it's already mine" as if it were a real memory, everything changed. The cells reacted as if it had already happened. It didn't matter if external reality hadn't caught up yet. For my body, the present was already different. It was as if I was hacking the nervous system with my own consciousness. I became the scriptwriter of my physiology. When I understood this, I stopped waiting for signals from the world. I started to emit them. The cell does not argue. It responds, and it responds with health, with expansion, with vitality. When it receives the information that everything is fine, that everything has already been achieved. The mind creates the internal environment, and this environment shapes the cellular response. This was what no one had told me, that my belief governs my body, and ever since then, I've been nurturing conscious declarations like you would nurture a cell. It's not just positive thinking, it's biology. If the cell believes you've won, it starts functioning like a winning body. That's when I started seeing real change. And it all started with a simple internal affirmation, made with total conviction. I had to confront an uncomfortable truth. For most of my life, I wasn't the one in control, it was a program. And that program was written when I wasn't even aware that I was learning. From the age of 0 to 7, I was a sponge. Every look, every scolding, every absence, everything was stored in my subconscious as a code for how the world works. And the worst part, that code kept running for decades, even when it no longer made sense. That's when I realized that repeating "it's mine" with intention wasn't just a play on words, it was a key, a practical way to overwrite old files with new instructions. Every time I said "I am abundant," I wasn't trying to convince myself, I was teaching my subconscious a new path. It was like pressing rec on an old tape recorder, and therein lays a new track, a new vibration, a new possibility, and I persisted. Even when it seemed ridiculous, even when nothing on the outside matched what I was saying, because I knew that the inside was what shaped everything, and the subconscious, well, it doesn't argue, it just accepts. It learns by repetition, by emotion, and by image. So I repeated, I declared, I felt, and little by little, that new frequency became my energetic signature. Of course, my rational mind screamed. It told me I was lying to myself. But I knew it was the old program trying to stay alive. Every time I persisted in declaring a new reality, it was as if I were cleaning out a corrupted file and replacing it with an updated, lighter, more expansive version. My body began to respond, and so did my emotions. The frequency, previously dense and limited, became louder, more coherent. This practice became a ritual. It was no longer about waiting for something to happen. It was about taking control of what I wanted to be real. And the most curious thing, the world outside began to adjust to what I was saying inside, as if it had listened. But in truth, it was just a reflection of what my subconscious was finally accepting as possible. For a long time, I saw the universe as something physical, fixed, predictable, until I understood that what actually exists is an invisible field, full of possibilities, waiting for a direction. This quantum field does not understand Portuguese or English. It understands frequency, vibration, information, and every time I declare something as done, I am sending exactly that, a clear instruction to this energetic field that connects everything. That's when I realized the power of words aligned with intention. Because there's no point in saying, it's going to happen. That's the future. That's doubt. When I started to say it's already happened, I stopped asking and started to emit. It was like tuning into a radio station. While I was thinking, will it happen? The field didn't respond. But the moment I assumed it was already done, it responded. Because it responds to certainty, not to hope. And this is not a metaphor, this is science. Everything in the universe vibrates. Everything transmits data. And I am an antenna. My words are waves. My emotion is the transmitter. And the field, it is the great listener. When I understood this, I stopped seeing the manifestation as a request and began to treat it as a command. The statement became my direct access to this invisible but absolutely responsive space. I have come to see the world not as something I need to conquer, but as something I can collapse into reality. The difference is in my internal emission. It is not about trying to convince the universe. It is about convincing the field that I am already living what I desire. And the field, by its very nature, begins to rearrange the atoms, the people, the events as if it was simply responding to a new protocol. And the clearer and more consistent my statement was, the faster everything flowed. Because the frequency stopped oscillating. I was moving from maybe to as, and in that moment, the invisible was beginning to take shape, effortlessly, without noise. All because of a simple statement, which worked like an activation code directly into the fabric of reality. I have always been fascinated by the placebo effect. How could a simple sugar pill, with no chemical properties whatsoever, cure someone simply because the person believed they were being treated? This led me to an inescapable conclusion. The body does not respond to medicine. It responds to the belief in medicine. The nervous system, when it believes something has happened, changes its entire physiology as if it had actually happened. That's when I started to apply this principle consciously. Instead of waiting for something external to trigger a reaction, I would induce this state myself by saying, it's already happened. It wasn't a play on words. It was a neurochemical simulation. I would immerse myself in the emotion of achievement, feel the vibration of what had already been accomplished, and my body would obey. My heart rate, my breathing, and even my hormones would change. Everything would adjust to this new perception of reality. This practice became a lever. I realized that I could trigger the placebo from the inside out, without needing a pill, without needing a diagnosis. All I had to do was declare it with conviction, access the corresponding emotional state, and let the body do the rest. It was like activating an internal switch. The brain received the information that the goal had already been achieved and began to function in accordance with this fact. Of course, this requires consistency. It's no use just saying it out loud. The body only reacts when it believes it, and it believes it when the emotions are aligned. When I said it's done and at the same time felt fear or doubt, nothing that happened. But when I could sustain that certainty for a few minutes, something inside me changed. It was too real to ignore. The nervous system accepted it as the truth, and the body followed the script. I began to understand that the placebo effect was not a trick. It was a biological technology, and that the statement, when made with intention, was the most direct trigger for activating this system. That was when everything changed, because instead of waiting for the world to change so I could feel better, I changed my internal chemistry and let the world follow suit. I've been saying this for years, even when it seemed to contradict what traditional biology says. Your genes don't control your life. What controls your genetic expression is your environment and, more than that, your perception of your environment. In other words, when I make an emotional statement, I'm reconfiguring my internal biochemical environment, and that, in turn, directly alters which genes are turned on or off. The first time I noticed this in my own body was when I decided to live as if the healing had already happened, not just think, live. I changed my breathing, my diet, my emotional state, all in line with this new information, and it didn't take long for my body to start responding. The tests changed, the energy changed, not because I deserved it, but because I gave my body a new reading of reality. This change comes from the top, from consciousness, and works its way down to the nucleus of the cell. The statement "it's mine now" is not just a pretty phrase, it's a vibrational command that alters the chemical signals circulating throughout the body. And these signals, when interacting with the cell membrane, activate or deactivate specific genes. I began to treat my affirmations as true gene therapies, because that's what they did. They changed my biology in practice, and that's where emotion comes in. Because there is no sustained epigenetic change without coherent emotion. If I say something but feel the opposite, the cell receives confusing signals. But when speech, thought and feeling go hand in hand, oh my friend, then everything opens up. I started to see improvements in my skin, my sleep, my mood, and the most interesting thing, without any external treatment, only with internal coherence. There are no more excuses. Today, science knows that genes are not destiny, they are possibilities, and I am the one who chooses which possibilities become reality. I just have to live as if they already are, because by living like this, I activate the right programs, the right proteins, the pathways to health, abundance, and transformation, and this happens inside my cells. With every breath, I grew up believing that life happened to me as if I were a passenger being carried along by circumstances. But biology showed me otherwise. When I delved into the study of consciousness, it became clear the mind is not just a reflection of reality, it is its creator. The universe does not respond to victims, it responds to creators. And that's when everything changed. When I stopped reacting and started declaring, I changed my position on the chessboard. Taking on this role was uncomfortable at first, because it meant stepping out of the complaint, the pattern, the passivity, but it was also liberating. By saying "this is mine," I wasn't begging, I was taking ownership. Like an architect who looks at the project and says, "It's done." The universe responds to this certainty. It doesn't align with doubt, it aligns with conscious command, with the clear emission of an unwavering intention. I began to notice the effects of this on my relationships, on my body, on the sync of my daily life. The more I embraced my position as the source of change, the more the world around me began to reorganize itself. It wasn't magic, it was biology in action. Its cells receiving new signals, quantum fields responding to new frequencies, all because I stopped waiting and started declaring. And this shift is subtle but profound, because it's not about having control over everything, but about recognizing that I am part of the creative process, that my state of being, my inner language, my focus, and my emotion are creating the reality that I call life. There is no neutrality in this. Either I create consciously, or I am created by the unconscious programs, and declaring what I want as already done is the quickest way to turn this around. Since then, I've been reminding myself every day, I'm not a character waiting for a script. I'm the scriptwriter. The entire universe is listening to what I'm saying, and it responds with surgical precision, not to what I want, but to what I assume to be true. That's why every time I say, "It's mine," it's as if the universe is waving back, saying, "Understood, it's on its way." I thought that all I had to do was think positively, that saying it'll work out every now and then was enough. But it didn't work. Nothing really changed. Until I understood, the universe, the field, the body, they don't just respond to what I think, but to what I vibrate. And vibration isn't just an idea, it's coherence. When my words say one thing, my thoughts another, and my feelings yet another, reality gets confused, and nothing happens. It was only when I began to align everything, thought, word, and emotion, that the results began to appear. I needed to feel what I was saying. I needed to believe what I was thinking. And that only came when I stopped everything and immersed myself in the internal state of already accomplished. When I said "it's mine," I forced myself to breathe differently, to walk differently, to vibrate as if it were true. And that was when the magic happened. Because your body knows when you are in coherence, so does your field. Vibration doesn't lie. When everything is aligned, you emit a stable, clean, powerful wave. And it is this wave that resonates with opportunities, solutions, and answers that you never imagined existed. I have tested this dozens of times. In financial decisions, in health, even in reconciliations, the key was always the same: vibrational coherence. Of course, at first my body resisted, because it was used to the old frequency, the frequency of doubt, of haste, of fear. But I persisted. I repeated it. I adjusted it, until the new state began to feel natural, like a radio station that finally tunes in without noise, and everything around me seemed to respond more clearly. Things didn't come because I begged for them. They came because I was compatible with them. Today, every time I declare something done, I do an internal check. Am I really feeling this? Is my emotion on the same wavelength as my word? If the answer is yes, then I let it go, because I know it is done. The universe only needs a consistent signal to move everything. And when the vibration is consistent, it doesn't hesitate. For a long time, I was told that the brain was fixed, that personality was rigid. But studies in neuroplasticity disproved all that. I discovered that my brain was constantly being shaped by what I repeated in words, in thoughts, in actions. And when I understood that, I realized that the statement wasn't just a metaphysical assertion. It was a literal exercise in brain rewiring. I didn't have to be who I had always been. I could rewrite myself. That's when I got into the habit of repeating every day what I wanted to be. Not as an empty mantra, but as an identity in the making. I said I am this already so often that, little by little, my brain began to accept it. New neural connections began to form. New patterns began to emerge. I stopped being the man conditioned by past experiences, and began to become the man shaped by a chosen vision. And this is what science clearly shows. What you practice regularly becomes a dominant circuit in your brain. If I emotionally declared that I am healthy, abundant, loved, and I sustain that every day, my brain interprets it as a new model of identity. It begins to erase the old pathways. It begins to reinforce the new ones. And over time, my physiology itself aligns with this new me that I am choosing to be. This process requires patience, because the brain likes what is familiar. It'll try to pull you back to the old. This will remind you of the past, of the traumas, of the failures. But if you persist, something changes. I saw this happen to me. The doubts lost strength, the new identity gained space, and, before I knew it, I was already living according to what had previously been just a bold statement. My brain no longer distinguished between the real and what I repeated as truth. Today, I understand. Declaring is not just wanting, it is installing a new program. A program that, over time, takes over the entire machine. That is what keeps me going. Because I know that, each time I repeat, I already am, a new version of me gains strength, and continues to grow stronger, silently and irreversibly. If there's one thing I've learned along this journey, it's that you don't have to wait for anything to change to start living differently, because it's when you firmly declare the new that everything starts to align, cell by cell, step by step, vibration by vibration. Reality always responds to what you hold as true within yourself. Comment below the phrase that touched you the most in this video. Choose one, record it in your mind, and say it out loud today, because sometimes it's a single statement that changes everything.